Hey guys, it's Ezekiel here with the British and Irish Quidditch League here at Ministry of Fantastical Games and Sports. Did a video not too long ago about talking about the British and Irish Quidditch League, how it's structured, the way the overall management of a team works, went through the specific teams, but I wanted to go through a little bit on this video and talk about the actual looking at your team, looking at the league table and all the league resources, and how you can interpret those sheets because everything does run on Google Sheets. It's a little different. If you've not played a management sim game before, you may not quite understand everything. So I know there's a ton of questions out there about all of it. So I just wanted to go through some of this and break it down as best as I possibly can. Of course, you can always ask me in Discord, ping me in channel if you have any specific questions. I prefer pings in the open channel because then anybody can answer them. I'm a little bit less responsive to DMs. That might sound counterproductive, but yeah, the open channel is the best way to do it because you can always talk to other people who are managers as well, and they may know just as much or even more than I do. There's a lot of smarter people than me who can figure out a game that I created a lot better. Um, and you might even get a answer. It's just asking in the main channel. Um, if you're on this video and you don't know what the heck I'm talking about, the British and Irish Quidditch League that we've just started at the Ministry of Fantastical Games and Sports is a simulation, just like Football Manager, just like Madden NFL Head Coach Mode, anything like that, where you take over a Quidditch team, a canon Quidditch team, and you manage the team. You get your players, you manage your salary cap, you manage how they're used, strategies, all that kind of sorts of stuff, and you try and get your team to the best they possibly can be and win the league cup. So if that interests you and you're like, hey, maybe I want to find out some more, check out the description or the link here on the screen right now. Come check us out at the ministry. Uh, we have two sports. We have Quidditch, where we're talking about here today. We also have grab ball, which is a Star Wars sport that a lot of people don't know about. It's basically a mix between basketball and lacrosse. It's the first sport we made, and we were able to expand that into Quidditch, which is what we're going to be talking about right now. So, British and Irish Quidditch League is 13 teams across Britain and Ireland. This is the we call it the stats and standings sheet. This is going to be pinned in the Quidditch information channel. You'll always be able to find it no matter what you're doing. It's easy to find. Everybody has access to this, and it has pretty much all the information you could possibly want without diving into your own team. You can look up other teams. If you look around the bottom here, you'll see the tabs that are there. You can go to all these tabs. Some of them are interactable. You'll see the locks. These are, of course, protected sheets so that people don't mess with them. But on some of these sheets, there are some interactable areas where you can change things to look up other stuff. But the basic idea here is, we've got the league table, which all the teams and their names and the fancy colors and their logos, just to give it some pop, make it look like you're looking at something pretty cool. It'll tell you which coach there is. Right now, as we're talking, I haven't even released the other video I made yet. It's processing and uploading right now, so all the teams are run by AI, but they will be actual people running these teams. You'll be able to see who is the coach. You'll be able to see how many wins each team has. You'll be able to see how many losses, ties, the points being the table points. So every win is worth 3 points. Losses, of course, are worth 0 points, and every tie is worth 1 point. The team with the most points at the end of the season wins the League Cup. Now, there's some tiebreakers to that because, of course, you may end up with one or more teams that are tied in points. The tiebreakers are down here. First is we go by winning percentage. So if you have the same amount of points, but one team is, I'm just going to make some stuff up. If they're 13-0-0, so you have 13 wins, no losses, no ties, they've got 39 points. Now, another team may be 10-0-3, 10 wins, no losses, 3 ties. They still have 39 points because the ties are worth 1 point each. 3 ties would make up for the win that they're missing. My math may be off on that, but you get the point there. You could have a situation where a team is tied on points, but their winning percentage is different. So that's what would be the first tiebreaker. If we have the exact same amount of points, we have the exact same amount of wins, then we go into the head-to-head record. If Appleby and Ballycastle are tied on points, they're tied in winning percentage, well, we'll go look at the games where they played against each other. If Appleby won both of those games, then Appleby is the champion. If they split those games, because every team plays each other twice, once at home, once away, then there will be a third one, which is point differential, which is tracked over here. We keep track of how many points every team has scored, how many points they've allowed, and that gives us a point differential. The team with the lowest point differential would be the tiebreaker in that championship discussion. So if Appleby and Ballycastle have the same amount of points, they've got the same winning percentage, they split their games against each other, then we go into point differential, which is how they performed against the rest of the league. If Appleby is scoring 10 more points than all of their other opponents in all the games they played, but Ballycastle scoring 10 less, then Appleby's going to be the champion. If we get down to all of these and they're still tied, at that point, we will be declaring co-champions. There's 3 tiebreakers there. I don't anticipate that happening, at least too much, but there's a scenario in which case it happens. So just be aware that if we get through all 3 of these tiebreakers, then you're co-champions. Congratulations. We also keep track of points per game here and points against per game here. That doesn't really mean anything. It's just a fun stat to track. I know I like to see that personally. Like to see across these games how many points am I scoring on average. So these 2 columns don't mean anything. They're just informational. But a lot of people like them. So that's the table. This button is here just for me so that after games are run, I can just hit a button and this whole table will sort by itself. It'll sort first by the amount of points, then it'll sort by winning percentage, and then it will sort by point differential. But manually, I would be going through these tiebreakers if it were to come up. We're going to jump through some of these tabs. Of course, this is the league table tab. The schedule tab is a list of all the games within the league. You can look at all the results from every team on this. I don't have a picture of it because it's pretty self-explanatory. It's just a list of every game for every set of games, the results, and the attendance for them. Free agents. This is just a list of all the free agents. I didn't take a picture of this one either because it's going to kind of show some redundant information from some of the other pages we see. But this is where you would look at any free agent that you see or that you want to see. If you're looking for some chasers, you're looking for some new beaters, you're looking for a new seeker, you can come here. You can see who's available. Trade block is a similar idea, but this is only for players that are on teams that those teams want to give them away for whatever reason. They don't think that they fit their team. They maybe they're a little too high salary, whatever. Any player who is on the trade block and is available to be traded for will be listed in here, and you'll be able to put your own players on that trade block as well. We'll go through that in a minute. Player lookup, we'll get back to that one. The free agent form we're going to show. Team lookup, this is very similar to the team pages that we're going to see, but you could pull any team in the league and kind of get an overview of their roster, so maybe you can game plan against them. It does follow the same rules as all the other sheets. The only thing you won't see here mainly is their usage and team strategies. So you won't be able to use that for your planning, but you can see how good a player is. You can see their attribute ratings, all that kind of stuff. Team and player leaderboards. These are just a list of like in the team leaderboards, for example, we have the salary cap tracker, so we can see every team, their salary total, how much they're using, how close they're getting to the cap. We can see which team is scoring the most. We can keep track of the golden broom that we talked about in the last one, where the team who's scoring the most points. You can also keep track of the league table in this one for the cup. You can see which team is scoring the most on average. All sorts of things. You can even see the attendance averages for teams. Player leaderboards does the same thing, but it's on the individual player scale. So you can see the top chasers, the top beaters, the top keepers, the top seekers, all that kind of stuff on various different stats. League rules is, of course, pretty self-explanatory. This is where as many rules as I could fit into the sheet that I could think of are there. If you have a question about what might be a rule, what might not be a rule, it's probably in there. And if you see something that's not in there or something that's not quite clear, just go ahead and ask me. We'll get some clarification on it. It may even be a rule we haven't thought of yet and we need to make, just so that it's an even playing field. But they're all in there, as many as I can get. So let's go through the player lookup just for a minute, because this one's kind of unique. This is one of those fields that I was talking about that is editable. You can select this drop down, and it is an alphabetical list of every player in the entire league. So, for example, if you are looking at the free agent list and you're like, oh, Aaron Moore's a pretty good player. Of course, he's not an available free agent, but I like Aaron Moore. I like the way his stats look. Maybe he used to be on a team. Let's go look. You can pull up a player and you can pull their stats right here. Of course, you can see all their attributes. You can see their potential, some demographics like their age, their gender, what country they come from, their overall rating. And overall is an average of all of these attributes. It's not an exact average. There's a couple that are combined there, but it's an overall average. It gives you a snapshot of how good a player might be, and it is used to determine what kind of salary that they ask for on the free agent market. You see all the attributes down here, which we talked about in the last video. Then you can see all their stats. You can see how many games they've played, their shot percentage, pass percentage, their bludger hitting percentage. These won't, and all of these are not going to be the same for everybody, because of course a chaser's not going to be hitting any bludgers, so that's always going to be 0. A beater's not going to be shooting or passing the quaffle ever, so these are always going to be 0 for a beater. But you can see some other stuff. You can also see if that player's on the trade block there. So it's just a snapshot of any player that you'd like to look up, whether they're on the trade block or they're a free agent. You want to kind of look up some stats, or just honestly just comb through some players. Then this is the new thing. This is what I'm going to need your guys' help with, to experiment with. Make sure it works. I did do some testing with somebody else before. It seemed to work just fine. But it is new. It's not something I've ever done before. I'm really excited about it because it does automate the process somehow. When you find a free agent that you are interested in, you go to the free agent list, you look them up. Oh, I really like this player. Let me go ahead and put a bid on him. You can come up here to this player ID drop down. And if we go back and look at this, so every player has a player ID. It is listed. I can't remember if it's the first column. We'll see in a minute, but it is one of the first columns for every player. So every player has a player ID, PID, PID, and that is how you will look up players on this list. So you got to know that player ID is important for pretty much everything. While it's mostly informational and just for organization purposes, it's one of the most organization purposes we have. Because say you've got a player with the same name, same first name, last name, which has happened before, we look them up by the ID. So you pull in the ID, it automatically will fill in the name, it'll fill in their overall, it'll fill in their position, their age, and it will fill in the desired minimum average annual value of the contract that they're looking for. That's going to come up in a second. We'll get back to it. But just notice I misspelled that. If you want to put in a bid on a player, you pull the drop down, you select them, you see all the stuff. If they already have a bid, you'll see it right here as well. It'll show which team is the highest bidder, and what their average annual value bid is. Then you would come over here, you'd select which team you are. You can only put bids on your team. Please don't abuse that before I, have to do some fancy stuff and take this away from everybody and edit everybody's sheet. Please don't abuse it. Then you put in the offer. You can offer up to 4 years for any player if they are over 21. Players who are 21 and under can only be offered 2 years. If they're older than 21, then they can be offered up to the full 4 years. If you are not, if say you just want to offer a guy 1 year, you would fill in how much you want to pay them for that single year. And then these 3, you would also put 0. If you do not put 0, it will give you a red error right here, and you will not be able to submit the form. The form will tell you that there's an error. You need to go back and fix it, and it won't submit. Now, you could submit an offer. You fill in the salary here. So if you want to offer this guy 5 million galleons a year, and he's only asking for 4 million, that's great. Put in 4 million, 4 0 0 0 0 0 0, and 0 0 0. Boom, done. Then you would hit submit. It would automatically send a thing. It would automatically update the sheet. If you were to pull up that ID again, you would see your name, right, your team's name right there, and the value that you just offered him. Now, let's say this guy's asking for 5 million a year. You could put 4 million in here. You're going to get an error here that says your average value must be at least the minimum of the desired minimum. So he wants 6, you're only offering 4, that's going to give you an error. The total value doesn't mean anything, it's just another informational piece, but it does this right here. So this guy wants 5 on average. We've offered him 4, so our average is 4. We could put in 6 million right here. So first year he's getting 1 million, second year he's getting 6 million. That's going to be a total value of 10 million over 2 years. It's going to average out to 5 million. That's going to meet that desired minimum, and you could submit it. You could offer a guy the same amount of money every year, but you can't go down. You can't offer a guy 5 million this year and then 4 million next year. No, you can't do that. It has to either stay the same or it has to go up in value. If it goes up in value, it has to go up by a minimum of, I believe it's 900,000. So you could offer 5 million there, 5,900,000 right there. All of these errors pop up as soon as you start typing in anything. It's pretty self-explanatory. It should work really well. It should help us keep on track and allow you to see who else is bidding on a player to get those bid wars as smooth as possible. So that's the free agent form. That is available on the stats and standings page where you kind of do everything from a league-wide perspective. Now we're going to dive into the individual team stuff. The first thing that we look at is your schedule. You're going to see 2 tabs down here when you first open your sheet. Team information, that's the big one. That's the main point. We're going to get to that one in just a second. But you also can see your schedule here. You can just click on it. You can look at your schedule, who you're about to play, how that kind of shakes out. You'll see your bye week, so you're not playing anybody week 8. Not week 8. Game number 8, that's a bye. You just won't be playing. Once these start to fill in with scores, if you won the game, your score will highlight in green. If you lost the game, your score will highlight in red, and it keeps track of all those there. Ties are colored in yellow. So you can kind of see at a quick glance what your team's record is and how it's kind of shaping out for you. It's just a fun thing that you don't have to go a bunch of places and try and find your schedule and when am I playing, who am I playing, all that kind of stuff. It's all right there on your sheet, right there for you to see. It's that second tab. But the first tab is the main one. That's the team information tab. This is where you are going to spend 95% of your time in the game. This is an example sheet of the Wimborne Wasps. It is also the real Wimborne Wasps roster. You can see that doesn't have anything filled out on it, so the usage is empty. The position that a player is playing is empty. Nobody's on the trade block. All the strategies are set to the defaults. And of course, we've got some errors down here. just working with these on the bottom, the the usage, it'll show you your name. If you're the manager, it'll show you your name. Of course, right now it shows AI because this is an officially managed team right now. These will calculate based on what you select. So if you select Chaser here and you type in 30, this will automatically add 30. And you've got to get it to at minimum 99 for Chasers or 100. The reason for that is if you only played 3 Chasers, there's 3. 100 divided by 3 doesn't really work out. So it's 33, 33, 33. That's 99. That's the same amount as 100 as far as the engine's concerned. And that way your roster will satisfy. Every other position has to equal up to 100. That's because they're even amounts. You're either playing 1 or you're playing 2. You could play 2 beaters, 50% each. You could play a single keeper at 100% if they had the stamina. Most don't. We can see here the highest stamina on this team is Claudia Cairns. She has 93 stamina, so she can play 93% of the game. So Louis Ali is still going to have to play that last 7%, even if we max it out. These will also count how many you have. So if you played only 2 chasers and they still added up to 100, this is going to stay red because you have to have 3 playing at minimum. Same with beaters with the 2 minimum, the keepers at 1 minimum, and seekers at 1 minimum. It is highly recommended that you play more than the minimum because injuries are a thing. If you are only playing 3 chasers and one of them goes down during the game, they will be out for the rest of the game, and now you're only playing with 2. That puts you at an extreme disadvantage, and you need to account for that possibility. It is not going to happen every game. It may not happen even every other game. You could go 5 games without having an injury, but it's going to happen at some point. So make sure that you're accounting for that and playing backups and putting them on the roster. If this becomes a problem, we will up the minimums to 4, 3, 2, and 2. But I don't anticipate that happening. Dead cap space. This goes into the salary cap that we talked about in the last video. That ties into this right here. This salary cap or salary tracker. It's your active roster, your average age of players on your roster for the next 4 years. Every player that generates is signed for 2 years at the same amount. The average age doesn't mean anything. It's just a fun graphic or a fun stat that some teams like to have. So Wimborne is an average age of 21.69. Just means they're a young team. They've got a bright future ahead of them if you want to look at it that way, but it doesn't mean anything. The amount of players that you have rostered for that year is listed right here. So right now, for year 1 and 2, Wimborne has 13 players rostered for each season. The only one that matters in this case is year 1. That is the current year. If this is over, then you are in violation of the roster rules. Or if it's under, you have to have a minimum 8 players, I think it was, and you cannot have more than 15. So if this says 7 or 16, it will highlight red. You'll be in violation. There will be some penalties with that if you don't get them corrected by game time. This is your salary for the year. It's your total salary. We talked about the salary cap in the last video as well. The floor is $80 million. If you are below that floor, this will show up in red. If you're above that floor or above that cap, which the cap is currently set at $120 million, that will also highlight red. You'll be in violation of the rules. There'll be some penalties to go along with that. But your dead cap space is something we talked about in the last video too. I didn't name it specifically, but it's called dead cap space. So Emil Herman, if I didn't like Emil and he's currently making 10.9 million. If I were to cut him before the halfway point of the season, he's salaried for 2 years. For the remainder of this season, I would have to pay him 5.45 million galleons for the rest of the year. That will be listed here in the dead cap space. You can't just sign people, cut them. Hey, I like this guy. Nope, just kidding, didn't like him. So that'll be in your dead cap. That's for players you've cut and you're still paying them for the remainder of the season or the remaining couple seasons if they have a contract that's longer than 2 years. You can also trade with other teams, and one of the things you can do with trades is trades have to be balanced, right? So if you're trading a guy who has a 10 million galleon salary, you can only trade a guy for another person who's within 10% of that salary. So they have to make either 11 or 9 on average. You can't trade for somebody who has 12 and the other team's dumping salary. You can't trade for somebody who's only making 1 million and dump your own salary. It has to be even. Now, if you can't just quite make that work, if they have a player who's making only 7 million and your player's making 10, you're feeling it's a little high, they're okay with making it. The other team can send you money along with it. So they can make up that difference by just sending money. That money counts against their salary cap. So this will read something like trade to Appleby Arrows. If I was to send a player to them, it was a less salary for the makeup, and I just sent them some extra money to make up for it. It'll cost me however much, say it's a couple million for the rest of that season. That goes right in here. It'll be listed what it is, how much it is, and how long it lasts. That counts in here as well. So if I trade somebody away and give that other team 2 million, it'll count up here an extra 2 million. Now, if you receive that 2 million from a team, that'll count in here as well. So it's also another way for you to get more salary cap if you're a little over. You can get money from other teams to get yourself back under. So that's your salaries. It doesn't work with average annual value because what matters here is how much you're making for that specific year. That's how the salary cap's calculated. A couple other fun things here. You just have your logo that you displayed, the league logo, so you can remember which league we're playing in, and your team's jersey. Again, these can be changed if you like. If you have something that you like a little better, you can submit it to me. Has to be appropriate. Still has to match it in some level. So please don't send me anything appropriate. I don't want to look at it, and I don't want to tell you, no, you can't have that. So just working with some of these usage, this is how much percentage your player plays per game. If you input 33 here for Emil Herman, they will play 33% of the game. That's not a guarantee. It doesn't amount to anything that you can tangibly see. But what it does is when a player is pulled for being used in a specific play, players with more percentage usage assigned are more likely to come up. So somebody who's assigned 50 will come up far more than somebody who's only assigned 20. Usage cannot be more than stamina. So Emil cannot play more than 39% of a game because his stamina is only 39%. This is not a static number. Based on what we've got set right now, this is the base number, but this can change based on some of these strategies. We'll get back to that in a minute, but this number can change. So if you go over here and you set all these usages, and then you go down and set a different strategy, these are going to change, and you may now have an error over here. So be watchful for that. We've already had some people miss that, and I've had to correct them. So just watch out for it. Rostered position, ROSPOS. Right now, this can only be two values. It can either be bench, which means they're not playing at all. And if you set somebody on the bench, you also have to set this usage to 0. If you don't, my stuff will break. I will be upset. I will cry. And I'll ask you to fix it. I'll probably just fix it myself. But please try and help me out so I don't have to look through 13 different rosters every game day, see which one's broken. If somebody's set to the bench, their usage has to be set to 0. The only other option that you can set it to is their best position. It's called position here. It's also known as their best position. This is the position that they're best at playing at. This is the position that all of their stats generate based on when they are first generated as a new player. Right now, you cannot play out of position. So chasers, best position chasers can only play as a chaser. In the future, we'll be allowed to set those out of position. So maybe a chaser could play beater. But the thing is, they are not going to be quite as good at that. You don't really know that. It's not as natural to you. So there's some penalty for it. I just haven't worked out what those penalties are going to be. That'll be in the future. So right now, you can only play what your best position as, or you can't play at all. Player ID, we talked about this. This is on this page. It's mostly informational. Doesn't mean anything, but it is there. Overall, again, this is an average of all of their attributes. It informs how much a player wants. You can use it to offer guys contract extensions or anything like that. Here, it can give you a snapshot on who your best players are, but it's not the end all be all. Just because this guy's a 50 overall doesn't necessarily mean he's better than the 49 overall. Honestly, that's really a bad example. This 53 overall may not necessarily be better than this 51 overall chaser. As we can see, the 51 overall is a better shooter, but they might be pretty much the same on accuracy and passing, although Owen is a better defender. So this is just intended to be used as a snapshot. It informs their salary. It informs you on who you think your best players may be, but don't use it as the end all. A 53 is not the best player on your roster necessarily. Potential, this goes into progressions. At the end of the season, every player will progress based on their potential. Higher potential players will progress better than players with lower potential, but it's also based on their average usage. So Cody is an A potential player. He will progress one of the best in the whole sim, but only if he's playing enough. So if he's only being used on average throughout the season 10%, he's not going to progress all that well. And this D potential player, Fabian, if he's being used 90% on average of the season, he could progress just as much as this A or even better. So this will help you determine how these players are going to grow, who's going to grow the best. And as players get older, who's going to regress the least? So a D potential player is going to regress faster than an A potential player once they hit their prime age. You're not going to know what their prime age is. You're just going to notice that these values kind of start to lower and they get a little worse as they get older. Of course, their name, gender, age matters insofar as these two 19-year-olds, we can't offer them a contract that's longer than 2 years. They're also not quite to their prime, so they've got quite a bit of growing to do. Prime age, while it is hidden, you can imagine, like if you think of what a player in their prime is, that's usually a guy somewhere in their late 20s, early 30s, as you know, in their prime. So prime ages are going to be around that. So they've got quite a bit to go before they get there. However, Emil could be getting close to that prime because he's already 25. He, of course, can still grow, but he may be getting to a point where he potentially could start going down. We don't know. This is their position. We talked about their country of origin. This is nothing material. It's just informational, but it does also inform the World Cup. When the World Cup comes, which will start in season 2 and then be played either 2 seasons or maybe every 4 seasons. We'll determine about that when we get there. Emil can only play for Germany. Can't play for Scotland. Can't play for England. He plays for Germany, the national team. The captain of the national team will be able to go through every player that is associated with their country and select them to play for their team. You won't be able to pick anybody from other countries, but Then the attributes, which we talked about in the last video. Again, these are letter grades, A through F, A, B, C, D, F. They are relative to players at your same position. So Emil is a D in accuracy. That doesn't mean that it's a D flat and he's at, 60 in passing. It means that compared to all other chasers in the league, he's got a D. It's a D grade. He's just really not that good at shooting compared to all the other chasers in the league. If he was being compared against beaters, he could be an A. But these beaters are not good shooters. I'm going to tell you right now, we don't see it, but I can tell you they are not good shooters. It's just compared to all other beaters in the league, if they were to shoot, they'd shoot better than those beaters. Remember, these grades are all relative. Same goes with injury. Higher is better, of course, but these are compared to everybody else in their position. Again, injury only matters for how long a player gets injured. It doesn't determine whether or not they will get injured. So just because Riley Aiken is an A injury rating there doesn't mean that they have a less chance of getting injured or that they're never going to get injured. It just means that when they do get injured, they're going to be injured for less time or they have a better chance at recovering quicker. Injury length, when a player is injured, it'll be listed in here for how many games they will be injured. Sometimes a player will be injured during a game. They'll be out the rest of the game, but that's the only game that they'll be injured. So this will maintain 0. Sometimes a player will get injured for the remainder of that game and one more game. These will be listed in the box scores that you'll see posted on the forums. And then once the game is over, these will be updated and you'll see however long they're injured. And they cannot be played for as long as they are injured. So if Emil is injured for one game, he needs to be taken out. He can't be played. If this is an injury and this is set and it comes sim time, there will be punishment. Your team will forfeit. Please pay attention to the injuries and change your roster as according. Stamina, we've already talked about. Then we just get into a bunch of stats. You can see a snapshot of all your players' stats, how many games they've played, how many points they're scoring per game. Of course, this is only going to matter for chasers and seekers. Shooting percentage, passing percentage, bludger percentage. So for beaters, how many times they're hitting a bludger at a player and they're actually connecting and forcing turnovers. Tackles per game, how many steals a player's getting per game, how many saves a keeper's getting per game, rebounds per game, turnovers per game, and then for seekers, how many chases they've done on the season, and then how many catches they have for the entire season. Then you have your salary, years 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then TB. TB is a checkbox. This is another thing that you can edit on your sheet. This is trade block. If you look at this and you're like, I don't really like Emil, but I don't want to eat $5.45 million for the rest of the season, let me go ahead and put him on the trade block. Maybe he's good for another team. Maybe they want him and we can negotiate a trade. I'll put him on the trade block. They'll be visible to other teams as available, and you can start negotiating from there. On this sheet, all of this is locked. We saw the locks down at that sheet preview before. All of this is locked except for usage, rostered position, trade block, and the strategies. All of those you can edit because those are the things that you need to change. Everything else is locked so you don't accidentally delete something, break the sheet, and I got to go in and fix it. One thing to be warned of is if you move players around. Say we cut Cody, right? If we cut Cody, all of this stuff is going to shift up. It's just the way Google Sheets works. Unfortunately it's nothing I can do about it until I translate this into an actual website where we can manipulate stuff in forms specific to players. But right now, say I cut Cody Ward, all of these players are going to shift upwards. So all of this stuff that I have set will not shift because this is auto-filled. This is manually set. So if I had usage and a position set for Cody, I cut him. That's now set on Owen. Owen stuff is now set on Archie. So when you make changes to your roster, go through here, go to your usage and your roster position and your trade block. Make sure that they're set in the same spots on the players that you want them. They will change if you make adjustments to your roster, so just be aware of that. Strategies, these can be set as well. We talked about these in the last video, but beater aggression can be set, chaser pace can be set, and snitch strategy can be set. These are all drop downs. You can only select what's in those options, so there's no chance of error. Select which one you want, and it will update, and your team will be able to play on that. What we talked about here with the stamina, chaser pace and beater aggression impact the stamina that is available to your player. If you play at a faster pace for chasers, they will have less stamina available because they're moving around a lot. They're doing a lot of things. They're going to get tired faster. So the faster you play or the more aggressive you play for beaters, the less stamina they're going to have available. Now, if you play slower as chasers or if you play more conservative as beaters, they're going to have more stamina available. So this number will increase. They'll have more available for usage. So that's something you could strategize around. Seekers do not have this impact them. This strategy only sets your suicide snitches and whether or not you want to be able to catch the snitch and still lose the game. That is a possible thing that can happen, but you have to set that strategy. Keepers also are not impacted by this at all. Keepers don't have any strategy other than block the ball or don't block the ball, right? So that is the sheet. If you have any questions about it, I hope all that was straightforward enough. But if you have any questions about it, please feel free to ask me. If you've made it through all this and you didn't pull all your hair out and you're like, oh, this sounds pretty cool, and you're not already a part, you can check out the Discord. Come join us in the British and Irish Quidditch League. We haven't started yet. We will be starting, I believe it's October 31st will be the first games. It's a week and a half from today, and today being October 18th. I'm really excited. I know a bunch of people are excited. So if you've watched this entire video, you're not a part of it already, and you're like, what the heck is going on? Come check out the Discord. The link is on the screen. It's also down in the description. Come check out the forums. You can see the results of some of past matches. I'm also hoping we'll get some news stories in there for people to talk about their teams and what's going on with them. So that will be a ton of fun for everybody. I'm looking forward to it, and I'll see you guys out there. Thanks.